and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Covert.
Here.
Crowner.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Lees.
Here.
Young.
Here.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve as presented.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we'll go to our council reports and staff. So, Greg?
Great. I mentioned in my update the joint meeting with the City of Burlington. They threw out a Monday date. I wasn't sure if that, how folks were on Mondays. We don't usually meet on Mondays. Obviously, Burlington does. I said Tuesday or off Wednesday might work as well. I just wanted to kind of get a sense from council if, would a Monday work? Otherwise, I'll try and get it on a Tuesday or Wednesday on an off night.
What meeting?
A joint meeting with the City of Burlington Council?
Mondays work.
Monday will work.
Monday would be fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
It depends on which
I can
Monday.
make it.
Yeah, it just depends on the Monday.
okay.
But
I'll work Chad and get that set up. DC, I think you've sent out several of the drafts. I think we'll be able to use those for other things. Gary Hoyer is putting together the final packet so everything matches. For their marketing team is supposed to put everything together. And then the trail is underway. They're going to still be out on that bridge for quite a while, but you see they're coming down the hill. I did receive one payment so far on the invoices I had just sent out, so send it right in. I'm going to meet with the mall and chamber next week, just to kind of discuss and see how things are, economic development, et cetera. See if there's anything going on or that we can do to assist. So we're going to be meeting next week. Kelly brought me an interesting stat. Since Mark Crooks has been on board for the past 8 months, they had about a little over $59,000 in revenue in building permits alone.
Wow. How's that compared to the same time of the year or two
I
prior?
don't have it for the same time period, but
Okay.
we'll pull some
Just to
additional
see.
information. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Kelly was working on that too.
Thank you.
Actually, it's probably closer to 62,000 plus. I think you said there was something. Oh, there was a in process that was already received. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mike? No?
I'm good.
Okay, that's great. Jesse?
Just a couple things. We're still waiting on the donation from the side-by-side ride that we had a week ago. We received, I think, about $1,800 from that, so that'll help out on the K-9. And this past Monday, I was not present, but we did a joint training with the Burlington Fire Department with their department that was on shift that day, and it went very, very well. They did forcible entry and search and rescue out at the training ground. We'll hold 2 more of those for each. They have 3 shifts, so we'll work 1 more in June, then 1 more later in the year that we'll go with them, and it'll go over the same thing. Battalion Chief Boyd said I think we had 15 members for our department out there training. Like 1 or 2 of our guys would go in at the same time as their guys, and just kind of, so it went very, very well. So I was happy to hear that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything from building besides the finance that we've?
Well, I'll have his update for you tomorrow. The current ones that are going on, Casey's permit has been issued, the housing permit, senior housing permit has been issued. Both of them should be breaking ground anytime. We are working on a number of nuisances. We're going to try to tackle brush down. All those have gone out, but we're going to try and come up with a way to work with those folks. So some have complied, excuse me, some have complied, but others have not. So it's a work in progress.
So those figures you gave us earlier, that 63,000, is that part of those two big projects?
That's Casey's in there. Casey's should be in there.
I have to look at that list now.
I'm not sure if the housing is.
I don't
Casey
think
should be in
anything that
there.
was issued in April, it wasn't,
What?
I don't think April.
April? Doesn't think April was included in there, so it may not have been in there. We can check.
Well, when you do that compare, take those two out and show me what compare to pair, because those are kind of,
Well, it just depends on
unusual
what,
big.
Every year's a little different. I mean, you've kind of have to include everything when you're doing a year-to-year comparison, because things are up and down,
last year we
Walmart's
got,
looking at a potential renovation too. I mean, so they did that $2 million parking lot addition a couple years ago. So, I mean, it just depends from year to year. So you really just have to compare month to month, year to year.
Greg, I had a couple of citizens ask me about the senior housing, how they're going to take applications, or is that something that have they discussed that, or?
We actually brought it up at staff this morning, and I'm going to contact Chris and see if they have a marketing point of contact that we can have on hand and share with folks, and when they're going to start advertising. So, but I'll get that and share it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything, Kelly, from you?
no, we're just getting ready to, Katie's been working on a newsletter, so we'll have lots of interesting things in there, but, spring cleanup, May 15th is something that we're getting lots of calls on, so that will be in there.
I have a question, Jesse.
Yes.
You'd said that we'd had a number of people putting out items on the curb really early. Have you been able to?
Yeah, I seen some of it was picked up. There's just a couple small items out. I was just driving around today. I saw a couple small items out still, but the one chair and I wasn't there anymore. So either somebody came by and took it, or they put it away until then. So.
Okay, any other staff? Now let's go on to council.
I got a question for Chief, too. Is the shirts still for sale then?
Yep, we're doing one fundraise right now for shirts for Maverick. It closes on Friday. The T-shirt order does.
Just a comment about litter. I know it's been real windy for the last week or so, and I've been picking up litter on Mount Pleasant Street. And so I guess if we have any citizens listening or something like that, if they see something, maybe they can pick it up, or something large in a roadway, maybe they can call City Hall. 'Cause I've done that. They're losing some bags of trash once in a while when they're heading out to the dump. I've taken the liberty of once in a while putting it in the dumpster for everybody to city shop after I picked it up.
Yeah, we don't want to publicize that.
Okay, Andy?
Just been working on 4th of July, getting that going. Still could use more groups to sell raffle tickets, so if you're interested, just stop in City Hall. Good fundraiser. Several groups make 1,000 or more every year. Selling those for ball teams or clubs or organizations. So anybody that wants to get involved, it's really easy to sell. You sell them for $2 and we pay you back $1 on that. So very easy, no cash outlay on their part. And they sell really well because we have great prize packages. So anybody can just stop in and get some tickets.
Thank you. Thank you. John?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Therese?
Well, I want to give kudos to Mike and his crew. I live real close to Pat Cloning Park, and that place has really looked sharp this year. You guys really did a great job getting it ready to go.
We were just talking to Ron. The Lions Club is wanting to know how they can help too. We're trying to get prices and what we can do to repaint them shelter houses. They're awful faded over there too, so just so you know, we're working towards getting that done too. But we can no longer spray those wood chips. There's no chemical safe, and no one wants the liability, so before you pat me on the back too hard.
Well, whoever did the landscaping around the trees and stuff looks really
We
nice.
try and do that every year. Last year, if you remember, we didn't get the mulch till last fall. We didn't have it all summer, we just couldn't, there was no mulch to be found, but we've got a stockpile of that now too, so that helps when we have that material on hand and can get at it, and then we can get that done in early spring while we're waiting on things to dry out, so.
Well, a lot of people,
Except for lures, it all went down the creek last night when it flooded clear up to the curlicue slide.
maybe it'll help dissolve the silt. But anyway, there's a lot of people that use that park, kids, and there's adults walking over there. It's very nice. Great neighborhood.
I'll pass it on.
Since you did bring up Lewis Park, did we have any negative effect from the rain event yesterday, from any issues?
Just normal. The park was underwater. It was in the streets, but it only rained for a short time, so it caught up. We had that, a half hour at the most or something, and then the second one came. It gave it time to get that off the streets, and then it was flooded for a while again and caught back up. But no, we were checking manholes and stuff. It was a lot of rain, but there was that short break, and it wasn't constant, and everything kept up. We didn't have to get any pumps out. Just had one tree down on 400 block of Leffler was the only tree incident with wind. Other than that, we weathered the storm really well.
Thanks. And how's the grass collection clipping area going? I assume people have started putting
We're still
stuff in.
hauling.
You're still hauling, okay. So off to a good normal spring start.
Yep.
Cool, thanks. I wanted to say thanks to Heartland Packaging today. Andy Rango, Ron, and myself made a visit there just to understand one of the manufacturing members of our community, and Derek did a wonderful job taking us through their facility and teaching us more about what they do there and what their role is in our community. So I just want to shout out to Derek and thanks for him taking that time to explain the corrugation processing to us and employment opportunities they provide in our community. And they like it here and have nothing to suggest at the moment for us to improve upon, so good job, city staff. That was thank you from them. And final thing is 4th of July is coming up on the 4th of July, and at 4 p.m. on the 4th is the 4th of July parade, so I encourage anybody who'd like to have a float in the parade or entering the parade. The 4th of July applications are online on the city webpage. Please fill it out. It costs nothing, and we love having as many participants in the parade as possible. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, any citizen inquiries? Seeing none, I'll move on to new business. Discussion on a proposed ordinance implementing electrical and natural gas franchise fees.
So we have both the gas and the electric franchise fees, which are essentially identical on here. Kelly took the time and did a cross-reference to the previous ordinance. But remember, that's 20 years old or so from that original one, and there's been substantial changes since then, but I appreciate her doing that to give you an idea of what's changed. Section 4, paragraph 2 was the main discussion point that came up from Councilmember Johnson at the last council meeting. On the line tonight, we have Mike Wagner with Alliant, who works with communities on franchise agreements, franchise fees. And if we have any questions for Mike, he's certainly here to answer those or attempt to do so. But John had stopped in yesterday or the day before, and we had talked briefly as well. I don't know if you had a chance to take another look at that paragraph, but
I did have a chance to look at it, and I still got some questions about it. So I'm glad you're here. Yeah. So, can you give me a little reasoning why you're going back 10 years on the look back where we didn't have that before?
Sure. And can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's fine.
Okay, fantastic. Just, it's always weird to try to talk to people in a room that you can't be in, so you can't figure if you're talking too loud or not. So I chatted with my predecessor today. I took over for him. He'd been in this position for about 20, 30 years, I think. And I've noticed since taking this job in the last 3 to 4 years, as I've reviewed our franchise agreements, somewhere in there about every 5 to 10 years, the franchise agreements will change. I find some older ones that are like a page and a half, and then I've found some other older ones that are like 5 to 6 pages. So the difference is between your franchise agreement and the ones that we're currently working really just kind of reflect some of the changes that we put in place due to things that we've encountered since the last time you had a franchise agreement. I don't know specifically where the 10-year part comes in. I do know that around about 10 years ago, we had a couple towns, and mostly larger communities, where they were moving their lines every 3 to 4 to 5 years, and we were just moving the same stuff over and over and over and over again. And this is basically in there to encourage the towns to be more deliberate in their planning and construction processes. It's one of those things where even though we're moving it and we're not charging the city for it, eventually it's a cost that is in one way, shape, or form going to be borne by our customers. So we're trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can. Most of the expenses that we take on as a company, we budget those out or allocate those out over a 25-year time period. That's why we have a 25-year franchise agreement, is that we're trying to do what we can to recoup the expenses that we've put into towns and communities. The 10 years feels just like a little bit at the halfway mark. If there's concern about that time period and you think there should be a shorter number, we can certainly have a conversation about that. But really the main purpose of it is to encourage towns to be a little bit more deliberate in their planning processes.
So what you really said then, or the way I took it, was, you want us to be more deliberate in planning years ahead, but this is going backwards 10 years. And we didn't have any way to know that, since it wasn't in the last contract, that we could plan for the last 10 years for this to be covered. So it's...
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying that when does the 10 years start? I'll have to double check with legal. My gut reaction would be that the 10 years would start from whenever the franchise agreement is signed moving forward.
That was my understanding as well.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it wouldn't be like if it was something we moved last year or 2 years ago, we would suddenly say, oh no, we just moved it.
There's no look back. The agreement starts on day one, and that's when the period or the time frame starts.
Yeah, so there's
the clock.
when you look back, if it starts today, then anything that was moved 10 years ago?
No.
Because there's 25 years forward.
No, it's going forward. So over the next 10 years, in projects that we're doing, if we were to ask them to do it, relocate something twice, if the city were to ask them to relocate something twice in that 10-year period, they would ask for compensation on that second one. And now, if a private company or developer or other non-public entity, those costs can be passed on to those folks. But no, the agreement starts on day one when it's ultimately approved, and it goes forward. It's not a look back to cover the past 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to think about resetting the clock would start whenever you would approve the new franchise agreement, sign it, and we would get the letter of agreement. The date on the letter of agreement is more or less the renewal date for us.
Right.
So it would be that from that day forward.
So that's why is that we develop our comp plan so we can anticipate.
And, Mike and I were talking again today, but it's rarely going to come up, if ever, for the city. I mean, we do a major construction project, take street. I used Melville this morning as an example because we'll probably do some substantial work in addition to the street when we get to Melville, and it'll most likely include some utility moves as well. But once that project is done, unless there's a problem with it within the first couple of years and we can call the bond on it, then the company's bond carrier would be responsible for those costs, not the city. But past that time frame, I mean, we're not going to be touching that street most likely for another, if it's concrete, 30, 40 years. I mean, so in my mind, I don't see this truly affecting the city. Now, it specifically calls out private companies, commercial and other non-public development, and those costs can be passed on if the to those entities rather than the city during that development.
So
Yeah,
do you keep a record of what the city has requested in the past 10 years?
I don't. Our field designers would in the Burlington office. Those would be records that I wouldn't. Those would be records that operations would have. So I know there's records somewhere. I'm just not the keeper.
Well, it sounds like we're both in agreement on what this means, but yet the contract itself is vague on that. So I wouldn't mind having one extra sentence in there added, just stating exactly what we both agreed to right there, that look back date starts as of the date of this agreement being signed.
That would make
You
me
know,
a whole lot more comfortable.
We're both saying we agree to that anyway. We might as well put it in writing so we're not arguing about it later.
So basically, you would be looking for some kind of sentence that would say, at the direction of during the previous 10 years, with the 10-year date starting at the approval of the franchise. Of course, I'm using my Law and Order law degree there, so something probably a little bit more eloquent than that, but.
Yes, something short and sweet like that, and then you were going to talk to maintenance about maybe dropping that down a little bit to see if they'd consider something less.
Well, I guess if you guys are thinking of a shorter time period, I guess what kind of shorter time period are you thinking about?
Well, I had thrown out 5 years in those discussions. Well, yeah, 0, 1, 2.
Yeah, I wish I could give that to everybody. And I think really too, my biggest challenge is trying to keep it as consistent as possible. So,
Right.
I do know that we have in some towns made changes to reduce that to 5 years. It's just something I need to talk
I
to
do understand
operations about.
the need for consistency, but.
Right. But yeah, I could talk to operations about that just to see where they feel with that. So, yeah.
That would really help my.
And an ordinance can be changed anytime during the process up into the final change in the or approval of the ordinance. So we've got time.
Yeah, my hope would be that you would have whatever kind of updates before you had your public hearing.
We're going to have we'll have the public hearing, but when you go through the code adoption process, you can change the code at any one of those three approval dates. So we'll have a public hearing tonight on each of them, and then there'll be three readings, and at any of those three readings, you can make a change to an ordinance up into the final, including the final reading of the ordinance. You can make those changes that night.
We're just setting the public hearing. for the-
Yeah, we're setting the public hearing tonight, right?
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say I didn't think you were having a public hearing tonight. So,
Yeah.
but no, I would just to make it easier for everybody involved, so we didn't have to go back and forth with it. I'd rather get everything done on my end, so that when you guys actually have people stepping up to the microphone, if they do, that we're not saying like, well, that's going to change. So. I can work with legal and operations to try to get something by the end of the week.
He's got to run it through the legal team, so it won't be tomorrow.
So you'll work it on your end to get that done soon?
Sure.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sure. Did you folks have any questions too? Let me just kind of explain a couple things real quick too about franchise fees. And first and foremost, just it's your fee, not mine. It appears on our bills and we collect it for you. Sometimes people will kind of look at their bill and say, "Why is Alliant charging me a franchise fee?" So when those people call me, I tell them to call you, and I just kind of make that known just so that you guys understand that. Not that you probably didn't already, but also too that for things like the revenue purpose statement, the direct where you can spend that money. Some towns like to approve that really long version of it that's pretty much a copy and paste of the code, and that gives you a little bit more flexibility when it's time to pay bills. Other towns like to get really specific, so that's completely up to you. But you do have the option down the road of amending that and changing that if you need to change where you want to spend the money. And you also have that same flexibility when it comes to the percentage of the franchise agreement. Just because you put it in at 3% or whatever you're going to put it in at, and it's a 25-year franchise agreement, you're not locked into that 3% for 25 years. If for some reason you wanted to increase it or decrease it or eliminate it on one, but keep it on the other, that's completely up to you, and that's something I can work with you guys on. And then just the only other thing, just to kind of caution you, just because I know a lot of towns are in a similar situation that you folks are in, where they're looking for ways to increase revenue, given some changes at the legislature, and franchise fees are an option that many towns are turning to. A lot of folks in their head are trying to treat it like a lot of their other funding sources, and this funding source doesn't behave like a lot of your other sources of revenue. I've had some towns that are trying to get projections for it, and it's really something that's kind of difficult to project because there's a lot of factors like the weather. We had a pretty mild winter, so if it's a mild winter, people aren't going to use a lot of heat. So because of that, their heating bills are going to be low, and your franchise fee that's a percentage of that is going to be a little bit lower. So while I do give you estimates for what the franchise fee could be, and thanks to a young employee who taught me how to use Excel, we're able to calculate that down to the penny. A lot of those estimates are really just estimates. There's a lot of factors that could go into that. Those estimates get you in the ballpark, but what you'll see quarterly is based on the use. Right now with the electric rates, we have a rate case going through, and that will certainly affect the franchise fee too. And those payments are made in January, April, July, and October at the end of the month through ACH. So once you folks move through that process and I get the signed documents, then I'll work with the clerk to get a clerk certificate and then a letter of agreement. And then while that is all off at the Iowa Utilities Board, we'll work to set up the direct payment program. And then I'll also get a list of city accounts because all of your accounts are exempt from the fee. Mostly because it'd be kind of goofy to charge you the fee and then turn around and refund it. So we'll get a list of all the city accounts, and those accounts will not be charged the franchise fee. And then just one last thing to clear up, just because some towns have a little confusion with this. The franchise fee is going to replace the local option sales tax, but just on utility bills. The local option sales tax will still be in place for everything else in town. I've had some conversations with folks, and they think it's going to wipe out the local option sales tax throughout the entire town. It's just going to affect the local option sales tax that's applied to utility bills.
So how many years have they been able to do a franchise fee?
It's a somewhat recent occurrence, although I want to say the last time that I read the city or the state code, I think it even allows them to charge it on telegraph services. So I don't think we've had that around for a while, but I don't think it's something since 1800s. It's something relatively recent, as in last 40, 50 years. I can go ahead and find the date for you. It's something that more and more towns are turning toward. Previously, I would talk to towns about it and kind of explain, like, with the local option sales tax, your town is paying in a set dollar amount, but you're only getting back a specific percentage based on your population. So a 1% franchise fee versus a 1% local option sales tax, a lot of towns would see that as kind of a gimme because they get to have all of that money, not just a percentage of it. But usually I would get towns that would be in the 1 to 3% range, and I would say in the last year to year and a half, I'm getting more towns in the 2 to 5% range. I think probably 3 or 4 of the franchise agreements I've already submitted to the Iowa Utilities Board this year have franchise fee percentages in the 4 to 5% range. And I also talk with my contemporaries over at Mid-American and at Black Hills Energy, and they're also seeing the same thing where more towns are turning to franchise fee for funding.
So with that said, have you ever had anybody go and do the franchise fee and then stop?
I haven't had any stop. I know Muscatine, right around the time of the polar vortex, I believe, reduced the franchise fee.
Yep.
And then they did that to decrease the amount that was charged. I don't know if they ever put it back in place or not, but I do know they did reduce it. I know for a lot of towns, it's a funding source that once it comes in, and especially if you're in a larger town like yours, or a town that has industry or something like that that's going to generate a lot of money, most towns don't decrease it or eliminate it. They just stay with it.
But the option is there to
Yeah.
have it anywhere from 0 to 5%. So, and yes, we did, when I was up there, we instituted it and then dropped it down.
I mean, that's
But
what
they also have ATE, so.
that's what I would hope we could do here is, get the project done and then look at it again and then
Make a
drop it or
determination.
stop it, that, get the intended project done. So I was just asking for ahead of time, I guess. So.
Yeah, I have had one town that when they passed it, they did an increase where it went up 1% every year until it got to a certain percentage. I have seen a town do that to kind of ease into it rather than to go all the way up to a 4 or 5% franchise fee. It creates a little bit more paperwork on my part, but I have seen towns that have tried to do that to try to not hit people with it all at once.
Any further questions? If not,
He answered mine.
okay.
We'll
Well,
see
thank you
what-
for your time.
Hey, no problem, and I really appreciate the opportunity to zoom in. I regret that my cat did not make an appearance during the city council meeting. He's been in at least 1 or 2 so far. So, sure, and then Greg, I will follow up with you tomorrow.
Wonderful.
And just kind of see where we are, and try to get this wrapped up by the end of the week.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
All right, no problem. As always, give me a call if you have any other questions.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, folks. Have a great night.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, with that, then I would go to item number 2. Consider a resolution setting a public hearing date for establishing the utility franchise fee for Interstate Power and Light Company, Alliant Energy, for the sale and distribution of electrical energy within the city limits of West Burlington, Iowa.
Motion to approve, and it'll partake on April 24th at 6 PM.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor? Oops, roll call on this one.
Crowner,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Covert.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll go to our second one, or third one, I should say. Considering a resolution setting a public hearing date on establishing utility franchise fee for Interstate Power and Light Company, Alliant Energy, for the sale and distribution of natural gas within the city limits of West Burlington, Iowa.
Motion to approve with the same date and time.
Support.
Motion and support. Roll call.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Covert,
Aye.
Crowner.
Aye.
Motion carries. With that, we have no citizen inquiries, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.